Kate, I am so bloody depressed after reading this book.
The Charmed Wife? Cinderella wants her Prince Charming dead in this sophisticated fairy tale for the 21st century. I don't know, sounds pretty boss to me.
Yeah, me too. I thought that this was going to be either a grim reimagining or a deconstruction of fairy tale romance tropes, but it was pure misery for like 99.9% of the story.
Olga Grushin?
Oh, yeah, she's a Russian-American author. She's actually really interesting. She's the daughter of Boris Grushin, a famous Soviet sociologist. She emigrated to the US in 1989 and became Jimmy Carter's interpreter, and I think she works for Harvard University now.
So, what's wrong with her book exactly?
There's nothing wrong with it per se. It turned out to not be so much about calling out fairy tales for their bullshit as it was exploring real-life abusive relationships, the trauma of painful divorces, and a midlife crisis through the lens of a fairy tale, and it's just so damn miserable. Cinderella bounces from one utterly heartbreaking situation after another, and every time you think this poor woman is going to get a break, it just gets worse for her.
I'm intrigued now. Tell me more.
Okay, so the first half of the book takes place in a framing device. Cinderella visits a scary witch in a cave and she strikes a bargain with her to cast a murder spell on her husband. Her fairy godmother shows up to try to talk her out of it and starts a shoulder angel versus shoulder demon dynamic with the witch. Apparently, part of the process of the spell is a manifestation of significant events from her marriage in the cauldron, like a Netflix marathon of The Crown, which allows for the bulk of the chapters to be a journey through 13 years of her life. The culminative story tells of a woman very much in love with her husband who very, very slowly becomes aware that there's a problem between them. First, she has to accept that her marriage isn't as blissfully happy as it used to be. Then she eventually allows herself to come to terms with the fact that it's actually really not good. Like, he's literally not talking to her for months on end and cheating on her with every woman in his kingdom. But she somehow convinces herself that it's not her prince's fault. He must be under some sort of magical curse, and she can break it. If she can just be brave enough and selfless enough and determined enough, there has to be something she can do to fix it, and she spends years and years and years trying so hard to find a way to break this curse. One thing I did like was this subplot that was running parallel to all this domestic unrest. It turns out Cinderella's mice friends came to live with her in the palace, and due to their lifespans being so short, you hear of several generations of these little dudes and what they get up to, including the rise and fall of dynasties and Game of Thrones style civil wars. Honestly, I would have been much happier if the entire book was about them. Anyway, as you can guess, Cinderella is eventually forced to accept there is no solution, magical or otherwise, and ends up hating her husband for the decade plus of misery he put her through, which leads her to seeking out the witch and the start of the framing device. At the last minute, she decides not to kill him and goes to stay with one of her stepsisters, who turns out to not be that bad after all, and looks into getting a divorce. Now, in my foolish optimism, I thought maybe, just maybe, this was the point where things would start to look up for Cinderella because she can start her life anew, but no. Things keep getting worse and worse and worse. She spends some time dipping into other fairy tales, and each one is also reimagined to be depressing as heck, and everything she tries to make a life for herself ends up going really poorly. The ending is satisfying, but there's no real comeuppance for the bad guy and no real path to victory for the lead. It almost feels like the story just literally stops, and on top of that, there's this huge plot twist.
Stop.
Huh?
You had me at sad twisted fairy tales. I want to read it now, and I don't want to know the ending.
Oh, okay, cool. Oh, you're gonna read it right now?
Silence.
Oh, okay.
Okay. First off, you really buried the lead with the mice subplot. You should have started with the army of lesbian warrior rodents.
Fair.
Second of all, you're wrong. This isn't miserable at all. In fact, up against all the media I've consumed in my 31 years, this is on the more uplifting spectrum.
Make your case.
Your first mistake was calling the end of the book the end of the story. The whole point is it's the beginning of her story. The plot of the book was just the conclusion to a mistake she made as a young adult. Yes, we don't know what Cinderella is going to do with the rest of her life, and neither does she. She has limitless potential now. She's finally free of the confines of a path she was too young to know she never really wanted to walk in the first place. Cinderella spends her story terrified of aging because she's been conditioned to believe only young and beautiful women have any value. But by the end, she's excited to see what's in store for her in the future. One of the key messages of the book is that it's perfectly possible and even wonderful to finally start living your life at age 36 with 2 children. The fact that there's no comeuppance for the prince is also a feature, not a bug. Cinderella has a chance at revenge and she passes it up because she realizes revenge just isn't worth it, and neither is he. She lets go of her pain and hate because hate is not the antithesis of love. Indifference is. Not caring enough about him to punish him is a greater victory for her than anything else she could have done. She loves her sister and her children, and she's reclaimed her independence and identity. That's more important than wasting your feelings on some dumb, mean boy. You also skimmed over one of the more significant moments of all. The Cinderella eventually had the courage to walk away. Not just from all the sunk cost of trying to fix things, but from being a literal princess. She may not have gotten what she thought she wanted, but she got what she needed. A second chance to live and to give her children a happier life. It's terrifying to shed your old self and seek your own true happiness, but she did it. She didn't wait for someone else to give it to her. The reason the story didn't immediately pick up after Cinderella strikes out on her own is the author is trying to tell you that it's okay if simply escaping the situation doesn't fix everything. You also need time to heal.
I mean, that makes a disturbing amount of sense, but didn't feeling all of her depression with her chapter after chapter after chapter take a toll on you after a while?
Not at all. If anything, it felt cathartic. I may not have shared the same experience as Cinderella, but I find more meaning in reading a story about a character surviving against all odds and making it out in more or less one piece. The point of the story is that it doesn't end with her happiness, but that she finally has the choice to find what makes her happy. Plus, no offense, but not everyone suffers from your particular contradictory mix of compassion and fear of deep emotions.
It is exhausting.
And just a quick aside, I really like that Grushin dipped into some of the lesser-known fairy tales in the second half, and I don't think their darker endings are as pointlessly depressing as you assumed. Take the 12 Dancing Princesses, for example. That was a tale originally painting women who dared to be free-spirited and party till dawn as unruly and a bit too rebellious. Now it's a story about a sister sacrificing her dreams and freedom to protect her sisters from the man who was considered the hero of their original tale. Olga Grushin didn't just deconstruct these fairy tales, she reclaimed them for women.
Huh?
I do see what you mean, though, about the plot twist we're about to talk about.
Yes, we are indeed about to talk about the paradigm-shifting twist that occurs in the second half of the book, making this a good moment for anyone listening to this conversation who wants to read it to duck out.
So, towards the conclusion of this book, it's revealed that the lead isn't Cinderella after all. She's a modern-day woman living in New York who suffered a mental lapse after going through an abusive marriage and is currently embroiled in a nasty divorce. Her regarding herself as Cinderella was an escape into a fantasy to help process her pain and help get on the road to recovery. Was this another aspect you didn't care for?
Well, to be fair...
Those words physically hurt me.
Well, actually...
Now you're just doing it on purpose.
Okay, fine. The book leaves it explicitly open-ended regarding if the fantasy part was imagined by the lead, or if the reality section was the result of Cinderella's world being magically merged with a more grounded universe, but I will admit the result was basically the same, and I really wasn't sure what to make of it, to be honest. It almost felt like the story that was ending wasn't the one that started. I felt invested in Cinderella finding a new life for herself, not this almost stranger we're introduced to in the final act.
Well, that's the point. When you're rebuilding yourself from scratch, you have to get rid of who you were. Cinderella here had not just endured a toxic marriage, but a toxic parentage as well. She had modeled herself to be the demure, perfect individual. A princess, if you will. Always agreeable and did as she was told. She was already a stranger to herself, and it takes her 13 years for her to discover this. Even if that didn't resonate with you, you have to at least admit it's really cool how the transition to the real world didn't happen in a single moment, or even in a single chapter. It was built up to so gradually. I didn't even start to notice myself until she stumbles into the 12 Dancing Princesses story.
Yeah, that was legit really clever. I felt completely bamboozled by the author. More modern elements like trains and cars are mentioned as the story goes on, but they're brought up as if they've always been there. Despite how big a part horse-drawn carriages played in earlier parts of the book, it's treated as so matter-of-fact and inconsequential that cars were invented a few decades before, you're almost made to feel silly for not having noticed them. Then, even when things are firmly established to be taking place in New York, some clear elements of fantasy linger on right up until the end, which not only is pretty unique, but somehow fits both possible explanations for the change in world setting, as you don't snap out of a coping psychosis all at once, and they make it clear that the worlds colliding was a slow process.
So did the satisfying ending where her ex tries to flex his power over her and utterly failed to get a rise not do it for you? You know what Shakespeare says about ends justifying the means?
I don't know, I wanted more to counterbalance it all. I wanted to see her bouncing back better than before without him, to show that all the hardships I witnessed were worth it. I felt like that was the only way I was going to get closure.
Well, not trying to be harsh here, just honest. It's not about you. She felt closure, and that should be enough for you. She's rightly so proud of herself for making it through and never giving up. Through depression, eating disorder, being overmedicated, bullied, traumatized, abused, she drew strength from her sisters and her kids and kept going.
She survived.
Right. Sometimes surviving is enough.
You could shake, try and shake it off all you can. You might fake, it's never gonna make you understand. I don't care what you do, but here's a tip from me to you. Look your failures in the eye, only way to say goodbye. Once you lift them from your heart, you could have a brand new start, it's true.
Much love and appreciation to my patrons of honor, Shelby Holtz, Atel Spurdloff, and Kat Harker. And extra special thanks to this video's co-producer, Kate Robinson. Be sure to check out her channel for more high-quality YouTube content. Good, I was not expecting that one to be fizzy.
Perfect.
Pure Flick's version of herself. She finds God and they kill off the atheist at the end. Didn't feeling all of her depression with her, acting like William Shatner. You know, I think doing it multiple times does help. Wow, who would have thunk it?